Welcome back to the Obsession Engineering Tuono project. Today is a bit of a treat. My mate Skiddy has turned up and he's brought along his absolutely immaculate Aprilia Tuono Factory. So, compared to my base model, Tuono R, the Factory has lightweight OZ racing wheels, it's got these lovely Öhlins forks, and it's got a spattering of carbon and a few other little trinkets. So it should ride better than mine. I do have the shock out of the factory, so I've got an Öhlins rear shock, and we've both got matching exhaust pipes, so hopefully they'll be fairly close, but I'm just interested to see how good mine is compared to a factory. Are the lightweight wheels especially a real advantage, and is it worth the extra money for a factory?
Skiddy's factory looks almost brand new, it is that clean. The gold frame, I'm not so sold on. It's a nice dry October day, so we've headed out into some of the wonderful Lincolnshire roads to see which bike rides best.
So we've pulled up in a local village and we've just done sort of the first stint on each other's bikes, and there are definitely subtle differences. It's not massive change, but there are subtle differences. Skiddy's bike actually feels a little bit smoother than mine. I'm thinking it's done less than half the mileage, so I wonder if it's just a little bit smoother, and it seems a little bit quieter, so it maybe still has a bit more packing in the exhaust. Even the throttle connection actually feels a little bit softer than mine, so maybe it's just a slight mapping difference or difference between bikes. Suspension wise, we can't really push them very hard at the moment because the roads are cold and the tractors have been out spreading mud everywhere. But Skiddy's shock feels a little bit softer than mine, even though it is the same shock with the same spring in it, so it might just be a setting difference. And his forks are definitely a little bit stiffer. On the initial sort of touch of the brake or initial load into the corner, there is a little bit more support, but the other side of that is they're a little bit harder when you're riding it, but they're still fairly plush. So I think if we find a slightly cleaner road, I think there will be a nicer fork to ride quickly on.
Right, first impressions of Wavy's bike. Yeah, I can feel it's slightly longer geared, and I think that could be just me. When you see the video, it could easily be just me with regard to how I'm using it. But yeah, again, feels slightly tauter, I think, overall, and I like the wider bars, and the bars are a lot better, and they're not only wider, but they're further forward, so you tend to put more weight over the front. This thing is a bit of a wheelie thing. Dave's good at them. I'm not practiced at wheeling, so I try to avoid it a little bit. But no, otherwise she's really good.
My second stint on Skiddy's bike down a nice twisty road, one that we're really familiar with, and it was considerably cleaner, so the pace was, you know, we were almost hitting 60 miles an hour in places. And actually I was struggling to keep up with Skiddy on my bike, which was quite entertaining, which gives me a fairly good impression that I've got mine fairly close. I think what it is with this, because the forks are relatively firm compared to mine, but the shock setting's quite soft, it makes the bike feel like it's sitting on its back quite a lot, and then it doesn't necessarily turn and track the lines quite as well as mine does, especially when you're sort of driving out of corners. I think if you spent a bit of time doing some setup work, it probably would be better. It's just right now the balance of the bike isn't quite as good as mine because I've done a bit more time setting mine up. Skiddy's a couple of teeth taller on the sprocket on the back, so his gearing's shorter, and it does wheelie a little bit more than mine, which is quite entertaining. But the way the engine works, I'm not sure it actually gets you anywhere any faster, it's just more entertainment. So yeah, I mean, the thing's lovely to ride, they're both really good to ride. At the moment I think I actually prefer mine purely for the settings that are in it, but Skiddy's is lovely, and I think with not very much work this would actually be a better bike.
Spend less money on a base model and you don't have to have a gold frame. Winner!
So after a fair old time playing around, riding around on the bikes, there are certain conclusions. My bike is excellent, Skiddy's bike is also excellent, They are ever so slightly different, but you can tell they're very much cut from the same cloth. The more I rode Skiddies, the more I realised that the quality of the damping in the forks is better. Even at standstill, they feel a little bit firmer, but when you're riding them, they're that much more plush because the damping comes in earlier and it gives a better ride quality. That is sort of my favourite bit actually with Skiddy's bike, is the forks just feel that much nicer. The actual difference with the wheels wasn't as much as I was expecting, and I think a lot of that is because the big handlebars on mine give you more leverage. The direction changes are sort of offset with the handlebars against the wheels. So that's actually saved me a fortune, because now I don't have to buy fancy wheels for this. But part of me is toying with, do I upgrade the damper pistons, because then I'm going to get somewhere nearer those forks without actually having to buy a set of those forks. But really, I'm actually really pleased that we've done the test, because both bikes are really, really nice to ride. You can tell with Skiddies, it feels like it's done a little bit less mileage. It feels just a little bit fresher, a little bit quieter. It feels like a younger bike, but it has done 10,000 miles less. And some of the detailing on it's lovely. You can see where the extra money goes when you buy a factory. The wheels are lovely, the forks and bits are lovely, and all the carbon bits he's got on it are really, really nice. So it's a lovely, lovely bike, but I think I'm okay sticking with mine. So yeah, happy days. Both bikes are excellent, but I think mine is, for me, still the thing to have.
Cool. Well, great to ride both bikes. I certainly like wavies, actually. I think the suspension's nicer on wavies when you're going quick, but I particularly like the wider bars. So it's very easy to ride quick on the road. Mine is too, I say, shorter gearing makes you work a little bit more, I think. But we were discussing that if you had a blind test and you got on the bikes, especially if mine had slightly better setup suspension, and you got on both bikes blind, whether you could tell which one was the factory. I think wavy can, because it can feel better damping. For me, as a bit more of a bogo rider, be honest, I like them both so much I was struggling to find some differences. Except for the wider bars are a definite plus. And that race shift is a little tricky on occasion. But good to go. Thanks, Wavy. A lot of good fun, mate. Do that again.
So, after most of the testing, we decided to actually get the tech measure and the tools out and do a little bit of setup work on Skiddy's bike. Now, most of the work has been concentrated on the rear shock because the forks are really quite good as they are. So what we've done is we've measured the sag, and with Skiddy sat on it we had 40mm of sag in it, which isn't bad at all, but because the spring's a little bit on the soft side, I've actually reduced the sag to nearly 32mm by putting more preload into the shock. And that's just going to help support the bike a little bit more. I've also taken off some rebound damping, because part of what was happening was the shock was pushing down and then the rebound was holding it down too far, and that was making it feel like the rear was even softer than it really was. So I've taken some damping off the rear so it returns to its sort of set position quicker, and then I've put a little bit of compression onto so it doesn't sit down as easily. And I've gone for a bit of a test ride and it's definitely made a difference. Again, a little bit like mine, you could put a stiffer spring in it, but then you are going to start compromising the ride quality over bumpy roads and bits. So it is that I think we're pretty good setting wise on what we've got, because on corner exit, especially now where it used to wallow a little bit and begin to run wide, it now doesn't do that as much. There's only a real slight hint of the wobble on the way out of corners, so that's much better. All I'm going to do with the front is literally a couple of little clicks off the compression damping just to make it a little bit softer over the bumps, but generally that's definite improvement on the bike. So now Skiddy might actually have a better bike.
Thanks for watching, and join me again next time for some more motorbike fun.